Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Extra Shot, which comes to you from TelecomTV's very own virtual coffee shop. My name is Honoré LaBourdette, I'm the editorial director at TelecomTV, and I'm here to host the programme that looks back at some of the themes from our recent Edgenomics Summit. I'm joined today by just one of the usual digital crew, Chris Lewis, MD of Lewis Insight. Our other regular Extra Shot buddy, TelecomTV's Director of Content, Guy Daniels, is taking a well-deserved digital detox. So it's just a double header today. And Chris, I should really refer to you as the high-flying Mr. Lewis. Tell us about your latest exploits.
Well, thanks to a very generous birthday present from a friend, I did a tandem parachute jump last week, which caused much consternation to the people having a blind man doing a parachute jump down there in Kent. But it did occur to me, not while I was falling, but afterwards, that actually what a great 5G application to have a drone follow you down out of the plane and film you, to save another parachutist having to jump out with a camera and spin around. So yeah, there we go. We found an application, Ray.
Well, that sounds amazing, and somebody will be developing that service as we speak. You can almost guarantee it. And I have to say, Chris, you're a braver man than I. So let's get stuck into our main topic here today, and that's the increasingly hot topic of the telco edge. Of course, edge computing in its various guises has long been in development and, of course, in use in the telecoms world. But we're entering something of a new phase as the compute and storage assets are combined with next-gen broadband access technologies and resource management tools. Now, such developments are particularly noticeable as the 5G strategies of operators start to mature and enterprises in multiple sectors explore the operational potential of edge services. So, where are we at, and what are the hot topics du jour? Well, that's what we're going to discuss today, and to do that we have a special guest, Honoré LaBourdette, Global Vice President, Industry Verticals, Telco Media and Entertainment at Red Hat. And as is customary, before we get to the main topic of discussion, we need to ask Honoré what she orders when she goes to the coffee shop. Is she a coffee or a tea fan?
So I am a coffee fan, and my go-to coffee of choice is French Market dark roast with chicory from the Café du Monde in New Orleans, which you can get in a K-cup now, so I can have it anytime. I don't have to be in New Orleans to enjoy it.
Oh, I like Honoré's style. That sounds great. And after I'd stopped recording and we chatted generally, the conversation turned to beignets, those sumptuous-looking fritters or deep-fried donuts, I guess you could say. I've never been to New Orleans and never had a beignet, but they look and sound amazing. Chris, have you ever been there?
No, Ray, but we have a family wedding coming up in Austin next May, and we're going to spend a couple of days in New Orleans as an add-on to that. But I should add, actually, that when I lived in France, we actually had beignet de cerveau, which is a brain fritter, which is quite something different.
Okay, back to proceedings. So with Honoré, that's another name to add to the coffee section of our containerized beverage function leaderboard, which we will see later on. But back to the edge, with talk of French roast set to one side, I asked Honoré, what is the biggest challenge facing network operators as they execute their edge services strategies?
I think one of the greatest challenges that they're going to have is how to determine the optimal return on investment and the total cost of ownership of the technology based on the number of options that they have. And those options are, they can extend their existing 5G core infrastructure all the way to the edge. They can build a separate network. They can partner with, a vendor, a hyperscaler. They can consider revenue sharing. There are a number of different business models and technology options that our service providers have today as they contemplate edge. And with each of those, because we're in the early stages of deployments, I think it's not clear to them really which one is the most cost effective And I think that's going to be their greatest challenge. There are a number of choices that they can make, and to be clear on which one is going to, yield the highest amount of revenue, accelerate time to market, and then of course be a platform that they can utilize for the future. All of that really does come down to what are each of the choices that they have going to cost them.
Well, Chris, of course, this is why we call our summit Edgenomics and not just Edge. It's all very well having the technology and developing some services, but what are the business models and how do ecosystem and technology decisions impact cost and return on investment? Are we any closer to any answers?
Do you know, the great thing about being an analyst is you're always looking at new inputs and trying to see how that affects the shape of the market you're looking at. What we have here, as you mentioned in the introduction, is the fact we're bringing in storage, we're bringing in compute. I would add to that analytics as well, and of course a degree of AI in different places, and of course the applications that we ultimately consume. In fact, what it says as a business model is we need to turn it around and not think about how those things get added together, but much more importantly, how the people buying the service at the end of the value chain actually consume those services, whether they're enterprise or consumer. And that, for me, is what's going to drive the business case. So it's a complete change around for the industry away from what the technical building blocks look like and actually what the actual offering to the customers look like. And I think because customers aren't really there yet, then people they're jockeying for position, aren't they, with all the different vendors, because there is an overlap between suppliers coming at this from the different angles, whether it's hyperscalers or the telcos or indeed some of the host neutral people we've been talking about as well. So no, I don't think it's clearer. I think the horses are all there now, jockeying for position at the start. So we're ready to go. We're getting closer.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. There are many, many options and many different players and new players all the time, of course. And that's what makes this topic so interesting and exciting, and one that will run for quite a time yet. Okay, so thanks, Chris. Now, of course, the topic of partnerships is absolutely key in any telco edge strategy decision-making process. And as we have all seen in the past year, many operators are teaming up with one or more of the hyperscaler giants to advance their edge services plans. And in fact, it seems increasingly likely that telcos will be doing very little on their own in the future, at least according to Yves Belligo, Director of Network Strategy at Orange, who discussed this topic in one of our Edgenomics Summit roundtable sessions when he answered a question about whether it is feasible for telcos to go it alone with their edge investments.
Yes, maybe two comments what you mentioned. Investing directly, is it the only model? Well, that's a bit of that's in all domains of the network. In fact, today we not only look the case where we just invest by ourselves. Having partnership is becoming the standard. This is all what has been done in the past years in the industry with the towercos. We also do it, by the way, also on the fixed side, not only on the mobile. With the co-investment on the fixed. So that is just the normal business now to discuss with partners and to envisage that we do not just use it the old way where we buy equipments, we deploy them, and that's it. So that's just normal business. Coming maybe to the, do we have clear plans on edge, on 5G for edge now, or edge for 5G? In fact, we see that there is some relation between edge and the Open RAN. So, and none of these projects are fully clear today. So there are still lots of things to develop. They will progress jointly, and a lot of things are still to be built. So nothing is frozen today.
Well, Chris, does this look like it's going to become the norm across the board for telcos, partnering on every part of the network infrastructure, especially as the radio access and fixed access networks become more disaggregated and virtualized?
It does, because the fact is that in the past they would have tried to build everything themselves and to control the whole ecosystem themselves. And I think the issue that they're not dealing just within their own network anymore, they're having to identify where the edge is. And of course that is many different places. There isn't one single edge, depending on which market you're looking at. So they do need to work with partners. And we know that the skills that the hyperscalers bring to the table, the skills that software players and I mentioned before, the application developers bring to the table. We've also got other players who've come from the network equipment side or the enterprise side who also will play a role in that edge delivery. And I think what's most important here is that the telcos begin to understand the value that they create. They need to put a lot more effort in to keep the customer happy. And the analogy that occurs to me is really around, the automotive industry, where every year the car gets some new feature put in there, whether it's a new sound system or different braking system or navigation, whatever, but we still get the same price paid for it. So I don't think the economic outlook is that fantastically better for the telco, but the relevance remains just as high, and the partnership model becomes absolutely critical, making sure the right people do the right piece of the ecosystem and that we don't try and drift across into too many other areas.
Yeah, no, great point. And I think there's no doubt that we're seeing the start of an established model here around partnerships. But there's still something missing for me in the whole telco edge story, and that is the charging model. The operators need a return on investment, and they need to drive profitable revenues from their edge exploits. Chris, have you seen any evidence that we know how enterprises in particular will pay for the edge-enabled services and resources that telcos have to offer, or whether the telcos get to keep all of those enterprise revenues? Are they going to have to share them with somebody?
I think the days of keeping large chunks of enterprise revenue are definitely in question from the good old private circuits and the expensive technology that we used to deliver in the past. So they have to partner, and of course the big question then is, what is it they're supporting, what is it they're delivering? And they will certainly probably not be the prime contractor delivering the services to the enterprise. Sometimes they will, depending on the relationship they have with those customers, but a lot of the time they won't. So their value, as I said in the previous question, is going to be adding things in which actually help support what's going on. So 5G in its early discussions around latency and around higher bandwidth, and also slicing around what that can deliver, I suspect that a lot of that is going to be hidden within the service which go to support other parties in the ecosystem. And therefore, it won't generate massive new revenues. It will maintain a lot of revenues and help support those revenue levels, but I don't believe it's going to drive them up enormously. And that, of course, raises the question, how do they work with those partners? Do they make it easy to work with the partners? And we've discussed this many times within many events across the industry. They are getting better at it. They're becoming more aware of it. I think, as I made in my very first point, thinking about it from the customer point of view as to how this ultimately supports their business activity is more important than actually emphasizing what the technology can do internally. So it's a big change for the industry, but one which I know they're embracing to a large extent across the globe today.
Yeah, there's certainly a lot of thought around this topic and the relationships and the role that all these different parties are playing. And as BT's chief architect Neil McRae pointed out during one of the Edgenomics sessions, it's still very early days for telco edge strategies, and decisions are still being taken each quarter about how to progress. So there's plenty more to analyse and discuss around this topic in the future. So it's that time of the show where we need to see how our containerised beverage function leaderboard is shaping up and where Honoré fits into the mix. And there is Honoré in the coffee camp, neatly nestled into the right-hand side, just below our previous guest, Ronan Kelly from Adtran. Now we may need to start creating coffee silos soon, otherwise we're going to become over-congested. I mean, we could do that by the favoured geography, if we get any more votes for Hawaiian or Sumatran or Viennese or Café du Monde brews, but it's all good stuff. Great coffee tales from our guests. Great to see all those headshots and names on there. Okay, well, that's bringing us towards the end of the show. Chris, any plans for the so-called British summer? Planning any more death-defying exploits?
No, Ray, I'm very much bringing it back down to earth and planning some walking with the guide dog up in the northeast of England on those beautiful beaches. And then actually later in September, a little golf trip planned to the northeast of Scotland with some people. So yeah, just keeping it down to earth and probably digging a few holes in the earth up in Scotland as well with my golf clubs.
Wow, fantastic. Right in the middle of Midgie season. Good plan, good plan. Right, well, fantastic. It's Northern Ireland for me. I'll be taking my fleece and waterproofs as well as my shorts and t-shirt. And this marks a bit of a break for us now as we take a bit of a breather before returning in the autumn or fall with our Cloud Native Telco Summit in mid-September. After which, of course, we will be reconvening here in the TelecomTV virtual coffee shop to talk Turkey again. And of course, after that come plenty more summits before the end of the year, and we'll close off 2021 in mid-December with the Great Telco Debate, where Chris, of course, will be in the thick of proceedings. So, Chris, thank you for joining me today, and thanks to you for watching. Goodbye for now.